Kia ora, and welcome to Constellations and All That. I'm your host, Tracy Cartwright, and together we will be exploring the world of family constellations with facilitators and clients from around the world, looking at different perspectives and experiences in the work, having a cup of tea and just chatting with some friends around their experiences in constellations. We'd love for you to join us. I hope that you enjoy this series as much as I have loved making it. Kia ora everyone, welcome to Constellations and All That. Today, I have the pleasure of talking to my colleague Ingrid van der Aar. Welcome Ingrid, I would love for you to introduce yourself so that the listeners and the viewers can grasp a little bit more of who they're with today.
My name is Ingrid van der Aar and I'm on the land of the Gayamagal people today, which is also called Manly in Sydney in Australia. Originally, I'm not from Australia, I'm from the Netherlands. My surname van der Aar means that I'm from the river called A, the double A. And an uncle of mine has traced that back all the way to the 1600s in a town very close to where I was born, and where now my middle sister lives as well in that town. So yeah, that's where I'm originally from. So it's to do with water and the river and farmland. And now I live in Australia, although I call both countries my home, or where I belong. But I guess in the Netherlands I belong first, and secondly in Australia now, where I've been living for the last 20 years. I have been trained, first of all, as a family constellator and then organizational constellator. I love the work of constellations, and I got introduced to that actually in the Netherlands, but only aware of that later when I was in Australia, when I was reintroduced to the work of constellations, that I realized, oh, actually, when I was in my 20s, I think, or even 30s, when I did a training session while I was working, there were some constellations used during that training session, which was, I think, management or at least training session in the Netherlands. And then just more recently, sort of the last 5 years, when I got introduced into that work again, I was immediately fascinated. And then I realized that in terms of organizational constellations, that's like, oh my gosh, there's so many people who've done so much work in that in the Netherlands. And I was removed from that, being in Australia and actually not aware of it. I trained on organizational constellations with the Bert Hellinger Institute in the Netherlands. And during...
With Jan Jacob Stam?
Yeah, Jan Jacob Stam, but also Barbara Hogenboom and Marion Tour. And I did also a workshop while I was in the Netherlands, and I went to Belgium with Bibi. So I was a bit lucky. During COVID, I was able to go to the Netherlands. It was unfortunate because both my parents were very ill, and that's why I had to come to the Netherlands. But yeah, lucky that I was able to. And because I ended up staying there for 8 months out of the 12 months, I was able to connect with all those people in Europe who had already done so much work on constellations, like the ones I just mentioned earlier, but also John Whittington. I came into contact with John Whittington from the UK then as well. And who's another one I was thinking of? Siets Bakker, I did a workshop with her as well in the Netherlands on moving questions. So yeah, that's very quickly who I am. And to expand on that a little bit more is also now going into organizational constellations. And why is that? Because my background is actually finance and working in organizations, and realizing that people join organizations to almost to find the ideal family.
Yeah.
Which of course doesn't exist. But there is
like joining a gang, isn't it?
Yeah. There's so much going on in organizations as well. And because I have that organizational background, I feel like, yes, I'm not trained as a therapist, but I feel in that space there is so much I can do and I can help and what is needed in terms of the dynamics that happen there as well, which always relate to some point to family as well, but actually happen in an organizational setting. You know, it's about feeling stuck in a job or when um, certain departments don't talk to each other or there's dynamics in a leadership team. That's where I come in, and that's really my happy space where I then really work and use this systemic work to see if I can let organizational health flow better, let people feel better, because my mantra
Mm.
is when people feel good, they perform better, both professionally and personally.
Absolutely. Oh, I'll come back to that other thought that I had earlier, which was that there is a lot of, I think that the Netherlands have got quite a good foothold or a good grasp on the organisational side of constellations, haven't they? A lot of potent people that come from there that are working in organisations that I have been able to, that's my understanding anyway.
Yeah, and I think Jan Jacob started that, I think also maybe almost 20, 30 years ago, and he trained a lot of coaches. So there's a lot of people who work in that space. And every
Mhm.
time I meet people, either coaches or leaders in the Netherlands, everybody seems to know about the work as well.
Yeah.
They know what constellations are, they know about systemic work, while in Australia, I think is still quite new. I don't know about New Zealand, but it's still also just explaining what it is. And
Mm.
explaining is often hard because it's actually letting people experience and the power of the work that then suddenly makes people say like, oh wow, you know, it's really fantastic to not only think about the world with your mind, but actually experience it and really then understand what it means, what invisible dynamics are, and not only
Mm.
the
How do you experience that when you're guiding people who are maybe really in their head more so than someone who might come to it from they've come in from a healing point of view, they're wanting to get some healing, but in an organizational constellation, if they're more mind focused people, how does that seem to flow for them?
You know, it's interesting the word healing because the healing is very much accepted in therapy country,
Mhm.
but you wouldn't really use the word healing.
That's right.
But actually, that's also often what people are looking for. But it's more like, you know, words as I got major issue with this, or I wake up, or I can't sleep because of this or that that's happening in the organization. So I'm struggling and I need some help. So, you know, some other words, but they're looking for the same thing. And to introduce them to a more of an embodied way, like you're saying, how do you get them out of the mind when there's so much in their mind? You can only, well, what I do is just do it really gently. You know, things like a visualization or a meditation, or, you know, so I see that you're really you know, stressed or worried about this, and I see you're very busy in your mind. I sometimes say, you know, would you be interested in just have a little bit of a breathing exercise or a visualization just to calm down? I might not even say the word
Mm.
calm down, but because that's almost like I'm judging that it's so a person is not calm. So try to avoid that. But it's really easing into some embodied work, but in a very
Yeah.
gentle way. Also, never immediately go into a big constellation with lots of people, but do small exercises with smaller groups, and also to notice what is the power of that embodied work and what does that say. And, you know, I often use the phrase from Bert Hellinger also as an introduction. It's very difficult to define the truth, but it's very easy to feel it. And so I also really like to use the word truth. What's really true to you? And, you know, let's discover that in a different way and then introduce
Mm.
embodied way or use wooden figures. So a tabletop exercise, first of all, rather than immediately your own body, but using something like the wooden toys,
Yep.
wooden figures. Then also ask, and what are you noticing in your body when you see this in front of you? What are you noticing? So slowly introducing the embodied approach.
And do you do a lot of group work in that? Or is it more one-on-one with
Both.
business owners? Both. Mm.
Because if a leader has a team and he has problems with that, of course, you cannot do a constellation with the team because you're not aware of your own unconscious dynamics. So then you have different exercises you do with teams. But you can have a group of leaders in one room and then explore a certain issue for one leader where other leaders, what's happening in terms of the issue. So it's just playing with that. But I also do a lot of one-on-one work, both in person as also online. I use whiteboard. And
Yep.
you say yes, you probably do the same thing, because I guess you do a lot of online work as well, Tracy.
Yeah, I do. I like that Let's Constellate. Keeps it simple. Like there are some different apps that you can use, but the
Mm,
whiteboard is good and I like it really just simple. Um,
yes. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want to have to learn a whole new dynamic of I was looking at some of them the other day. Some of them are quite complex. The tools that are available online, and it's like, whew. Mm.
Yeah, through the institute, the Hellinger Institute, we got introduced to the systemic VR virtual reality tool. So you
Hmm.
actually can look through the eyes of a person, move around. So that was an interesting tool, but I seem to have moved away of that because I find that a bit more complex. And another one I use is Mural as well, where we
Hmm.
also use the John Whittington tool with his wooden figures, but then made for a virtual space as well. Yeah, I
Oh,
tend to do Mural or either the whiteboard from Zoom. It depends.
yeah.
Some everybody uses Zoom. Sometimes you have to use Microsoft Teams, for example, certainly in organizations that they don't find it safe enough or secure enough, or the company has decided they're not allowed to use Zoom. So then I have to work with alternative options, which,
Mm.
we're getting creative that way.
Yeah, that does, doesn't it? This week really gets you get creative and how
Yeah.
you're going to show up and how you're going to share it with different people. I get that too. Sometimes I get someone and you think, oh, okay, this is not, they're not grasping this in the way that I am sharing it. So how can I share this in a way that is easy for them to take on board? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are there certain themes, like in family constellations, and we see that there's quite often in families there are themes. Is it the same in business? They have themes, or is it
Yes,
such a multitude?
and they're not dissimilar to family, I don't think, because, like I said, a lot of things, trace back from family dynamics.
Mm.
And often it's difficulty in relationships, for example, between leadership team members. And then, you come across parentification. A team member thinks that he's better than the boss or better than the CEO. He knows better. Or what other things can I think of? The example of maybe, I don't know if that's related to family. We can ask you that question as well. What do you think? When a previous leader of a team has left, a new leader comes in, and then on paper, he is brilliant in terms of experience and skills and everything else. Same with the team, very experienced, very, clever, educated people, but it doesn't seem to work. And what doesn't it work, which one of the reasons could be, is that the leader who has left was never acknowledged properly because
Mm.
left in a bad space, moment, maybe, yeah, there was some disagreement with the board or whatever, but left suddenly and was never really acknowledged. It's about a forgotten family member or, yeah, someone who's not acknowledged. And then,
Mm. The first wife that dies, or
yeah,
the love that, the husband that went to war and never came back,
yes,
that
yes.
sort of
And
thing,
it's,
and never
yeah,
spoken of again, or
yeah. And then the healing or the systemic sentences that you then use to make it all flow again, and that's the words I would use in organization, is then acknowledging what happened
mm.
before and
Mm.
say thank you and acknowledging that it wasn't all bad what happened at the end, but that person also had brought something good in the system. So acknowledging that, and then the system can flow again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's such a similarity. My understanding is that to have that you start with family constellations before you move into organization. Is that right? Or can you just flow straight into organizational?
That's what I did in my training for myself. I don't think you necessarily have to, but I felt that was really enriching and really helped me in my work in organizations. But you can also just start in organizations and do it that way. So what I do now is, I brought in, I don't know how much you are aware of that. I brought in John Whittington to come to Australia to
Mm.
train with us in Sydney for organizational work, for systemic coaching, constellations for coaches who work in organizations. And that's quite a structured and intensive training in terms of he has created three fundamentals training, fundamental one, fundamental two, fundamental three, and then after that also practitioner training, where you really go into step by step into parts of learning how to think systemically, how to map the field, so how to learn about constellations and then really work on your body intelligence of the field. And then also the third part is the language. So what language do you use to then go through that step to better? He calls it step to better rather than healing. But what are the sentences you use to a step to better so that movement can take place and the system can flow better? Quite an interesting training he does, and I teach the fundamentals one training in sitting now as well. And that's a nice way of learning about constellations in the organizational setting. And you don't necessarily have to have been trained in family constellations for that.
Oh, brilliant. I've seen John work briefly, some online, but we had a little taste of it a couple of years ago in Sydney.
He did a
Mm.
workshop on siblings, I think, then.
And it was beautiful. He's got a
Mm.
very gentle soul, isn't he? That's what he comes
Yes,
across as.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any examples that you could share with, obviously without breaking any confidentiality, or something that you may have read or heard about that would be a good example for people to understand the dynamics? I know you've given a little example about a head leaving. I think it was Jan Jacobstam gave the example of, I think it was Summer. I can't remember. Business, the new CEO had come in and the business was really going, not working. And it came down to there was so much, discord within the structure of the business. And it came down to the CEO not acknowledging the tea lady came first. She'd been with the business since the day it had started. It was something along those lines. So, yeah, is there anything that you can think
Well,
of?
yeah, that's beautiful that you say that example because I was thinking of a similar concept as actually what you were saying, because there's an exercise I always love doing, which gives so much information, is the living history. And that's what you're talking about.
Mm,
The living history exercise where you either go and stand in a line of people in that organization or in a circle, and then you can think of a clock where 12 o'clock is the person who's been there first, stands, who's been the longest in the organization, and it could
hmm
be a team or it could be the department, or depends with how many people you want to do it. And then the next person who joined is goes towards 3 o'clock, and then up until 11 o'clock is the most recent person who joined that organization. So in that example, what you just gave is the tea lady was there before, and maybe she was a number 12, and the CEO was 6 o'clock maybe. It's then so beautiful to actually visually see that who was in that organization first and
mm,
acknowledge that you were here first, and may have some of these sentences. Thank you for being there first, because that makes space for me to arrive as well. And then it's not the hierarchical organigram. Hey, you're talking about, yes, CEO is always on top of the organigram, is almost like the most important, because then you don't talk about linear system. You talk about the systemic way of looking at the organization with the
mm,
at one of the principles, which is time. Who was here first and who was there before you, which in families is ancestors, or is the grandparents, or is the founders. etc. But you can do that in different questions. So one is like, yes, who was here first? But also you can do it in otherwise. Who was, for example, if you are with a team and they're all in a certain department, like the IT department, who has been in software engineering the longest?
Yeah, yeah.
Do it in discipline or yeah, so different ways, but it really makes visual the
Mm.
dynamics of organization or the different hierarchies and the different connections in organizations immediately.
Yeah, beautiful. I saw that example in Sydney, hmm, this last year, but it was in from the time you met Constellations to where you are now, and it
Mm.
was really interesting because there was some older people in the room, and you would naturally assume they're going to go to the top end, to the end of being there, but some of them hadn't, and then there was a couple of young ones. Young, well, I say young, I'm 56, so they were like in their late 20s, early 30s, and they actually went to the front because they had been in constellations, had been in. So the question was when you first became aware and you started to experience constellations, not necessarily when you first became a facilitator.
Mhm.
And so some of these people went to the front in front of us, and it was like, wow. So you visually would not have thought that, oh, they've been in it longer, or
Mm.
those other people, they are much older, they will have been there. But actually, it was quite the opposite. Yeah, it was a really great experience to see that and then look down the line. Yeah,
And
see
how
where
was
they
that for you? You were in that line?
Yeah, I was in that line, yeah, and I was sort of more towards the more experienced end, but it was great, and to see the people around me, and yeah, yeah,
And
and yeah,
it's finding your place there,
it
huh?
is finding a place. It's a great experience.
Your true place again is about what is the truth here? What is the truth for that particular question? What's the truth here is where do I belong or where do I fit? Where is my place here? And if that feels right, then
Mm,
something settles in your body, in your system.
that's right.
It's one example of in an organization where that was done, where the one at number 12 was about to retire, but he was delaying the retirement. And it wasn't until that visual exercise, and then I think the leader was I don't know, 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, and acknowledged that he was there first, that settled so much in him that he said, now I'm ready to retire. Thank you.
Wow, having that acknowledgement, hey?
And by that visual exercise.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
What else? I'm always asking, waiting for the field to drop me some bombs that I can put some questions in there. What is one of some of the major shifts that you have experienced, or either as on your learning journey, or as when you were training, or within work that you've done? Has there been anything that you've seen that has just gone like a full shift to something so big that you thought, wow, and it was a little movement that happened and then it went? Has there been anything like that that you've
Yeah.
experienced?
Yeah. I'm thinking of two things. One is my own learning experience. And I don't know if it's major, but I think it's major in terms of the learning, is how surprising it is to trust yourself and trust your body. And that it's almost like a surprise each time. But it's like it's to me that's a major all the time. Wow, it is. My body knows this. I can,
Mm.
and trusting the field, like you said, like trusting the field that a question will come. And when you're open to that, and when you notice, and when you really trust your body, it works. And it's so fascinating, this embodied or somatic work. Um, so that I think is just major for me in my learning process, and that's actually still happening every day and every time I do it. That's almost like we're trained that you have to trust your brains or something, and that
Mm.
when you let that go, that's so much more information and other information comes to you, and that's the beauty which is so attractive to me and that seduces me to continue with this work.
Mm. I
That
like that.
surprising experience each time again, and each time again with new things you discover. So that's, I think, yeah, to me, the beauty of this work. And also to notice sometimes that you're a bit less open, because it's all about, this work is about distance, zooming out, and compassion without judgment.
Mm.
And then I also realize I'm a person and sometimes judgment comes in, but it doesn't serve me. But also being aware that sometimes you're also just a human being and you get stuck or you're suddenly judging or what I've also noticed once with a coaching session, that distance that sometimes I get sucked in. And then I get almost emotionally involved. I had that with a one-on-one coaching session. And I was that was actually in person and I was driving home and it was a situation where a woman was bullied in her workplace. And obviously that something, I don't know, triggered me, but I got emotionally involved and I drove home and I was crying in the car. It's like,
Mm.
how is it possible in this day and age that someone gets bullied like this? And I was thinking, Ingrid, you're the coach. You're drawn in. You have not been able to look at this from a distance. And the compassion became too much empathy almost. And so I needed some supervision. And I think we all need our own coaches
Yeah.
as well to really think like, and I felt like I couldn't help her. I wanted to help her. And I felt like, oh, in this huge organization, which is a male-dominated company, I'm trying to help, and I hear these bullying stories, and I was drawn in. And it was not until I had that supervision, I went back to myself, centered myself, and I remember the supervisor saying, "Yeah, Ingrid, you're just, a drop in the ocean, and you are there to empower that person, but that drop can then create a ripple effect." And reminding myself again, it's not about being helpful, it's about being useful. And how can I be useful? So hey, it's almost standing on the edge. Yeah, so I get reminded of that all the time, but that also
Yeah. Yeah.
human.
Absolutely. And sometimes that it brings up stuff for us to, like in our own field, in our family systems as well,
Yes, absolutely.
whether we're conscious of it or not. So, and and if we can be aware of that when it's coming in, or
Yeah,
if something's activating us or triggering us, or whatever words you want to use,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
I'm noting that. I'm going to look at that.
Yes, yes. And that's the beauty. And then there is this whole community who is there I feel, is supporting me as my teachers, but also my peers and
Mm,
supervisors. And yeah, that's very resourcing. Yeah.
absolutely. And so, do you offer supervision as well? I know you've shared that you're training. Is supervision something that you offer to others?
I've started to do that. Yes, yes, to teach and supervise other coaches as well. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
brilliant. Sydney's a pretty big place too, isn't it? But
Yeah.
then this beauty of this work is we can do it online.
Yeah.
Speaking of online, that's how you and I got to connect, was through the ISCA, the International Systemic
Yes.
Constellation Association, the Australasian branch, and we did a presentation for the international branch
Yes. Yeah.
around sort of like, well, it was our offering from down under
Yes.
to the rest of the world. And I remember you did a beautiful piece connected to the river,
Yes.
and
Thinking. Yeah.
that was, you were sharing with me then about your name.
Are you still involved in that?
A little bit. I haven't, because I'm much more involved with ANZCI, the Aotearoa New Zealand Constellation Association
Yeah.
that I helped to found. So yeah, I go when I can to that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was so nice to then, after that, meet you in person in the Australasian
Mm, yeah,
intensive, Constellation intensive. That is so
that's
special.
right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
If I remember rightly, and I'm not sure if you can recall what you did, it was a beautiful exercise around the river. We call it the Awa.
Okay.
And do you remember what you did?
I remember vaguely what I did. I remember that the title was Rivers of Thinking, and that I did an
Mhm.
exercise on the details of the exercise. I cannot remember.
I was thinking, oh, I'm
You
going to
do?
throw this
You
one in
do?
there.
Can you remember?
No, but I do remember it was really touching, and
Nice.
I felt, yeah, I loved it because I do a little bit of work around the mountains as well. So now I'm actually working on with both. It kind of inspired me to really get in touch with that part of myself as well. So yeah, just acknowledging that you've inspired me there. So.
Oh, thank you.
Mm.
Yeah. So what kind of work or do you do with mountains or can you
So for us, the mountains and the rivers, the ocean, the waters are very important to us,
Mhm.
and um, as they are to a lot of cultures, right? So I do an exercise where I invite you to meet to have someone to represent the mountain that you have near you, that is your mountain, that is the one that resources you. Maybe it's the mountain you were born under or near, um, and then a mountain from the land of your ancestors. And it could be any, right? So if we're like me, a multitude of melting pot, could be anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And then the river that is sacred to you here in this lifetime, and then that one of your ancestors. And so you're in the middle of the four of them. And it's quite an amazing experience. I did one, and I was giving an example, and it got really intense and really deep when I was going to give this example, but I held it together. And it was my Scandinavian, so I have Sami ancestry,
Mm.
and it was just so deep and so beautiful meeting my mountain and the rivers from there.
Oh, and Sami
Um,
is the north of Finland, eh? Or north of
oh,
Norway.
it's all up
All up.
through
Yeah,
the
yeah,
top of Scandinavia, yeah.
yeah. Beautiful.
And yeah, and it was like a coming home. It was a part of that, like
Mm.
I haven't touched on too many others yet because I've decided that it's probably best I don't give too many examples when I'm running workshops because I drop in quite deep and I
Mm.
have a whole little experience, and I'll just would you like to do an example for me so I'll get someone else to do it. So meeting my Sami mountain, my Sami river, and then bringing them to be with me to meet my mountain and my river that are with me now, and
Beautiful.
finding that peace, like you've got the waters that flow through you and the earth that has fed the bones of your ancestors. It's just quite a beautiful process. And for everyone that does it, it's slightly different. The experience that they obviously we're all unique, so they're going to get their own experience from it. But
Yeah.
and it can get quite big with some people. Yeah,
You live close to mountains now as well, then in New Zealand?
there's a couple of islands and it's full of volcanoes.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Sort of that way, surrounded by it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting because while you're talking about the mountains and where you come from, I'm thinking, as you know, I come from Holland, in the Netherlands and the south of Holland, but there's no mountains in Holland. So there is, there are no mountains. And yeah, but I guess it's what you resources, and obviously you're to the mountains because that's your ancestry. I guess for me it's then water. It's interesting. So maybe I'm now reflecting on that.
Mm.
It's do you
And
feel,
maybe
oh
it becomes the land then, and not, I mean,
yeah,
the mountains are part of the land, right? They're a higher peak, but
yeah.
it could say, because I have someone else who said that to me. They were from Sweden, and the area that they were from, there were no mountains.
Oh,
It was
okay.
just flat for miles, she said. So it was like, okay, we just go to the lands.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I realized, when how I introduced myself with name from a river, and now I live in Manly, which is the ocean. So
Mm.
I think it's individual what resources you as well, and so maybe it's something to do for me more. Now I'm reflecting on it with water, and I've learned to do some ocean swimming only the last 2, 3.
That's right. Yeah.
And I never imagined myself to be able to do that, but I went through it. And what I also think really relates to that resourcing me, so it's nature, but also how nature, and certainly swimming in the ocean, has a connection with breath. Because you
Mm.
need to learn, I had to learn to freestyle because in Holland I only swim with breaststroke. And it's all about breathing and how you breathe in and how you breathe out. And the minute you do that, it's that connection with your body again. And then your body in nature, but is really centering yourself. So that's the resourcing. And that also always helps me when I'm in the ocean. I'm now trying to be there twice a week. That centers me and that helps me for the work
Mm.
that I do. It's a huge resource, that nature and that surrounding where you live and where I feel I belong as well. Yeah.
Wow, you're keen ocean swimming in Australia.
I know. I never imagined it to be possible, but
Yeah,
if it's
well
possible,
done.
I always say if I can do it, and how, my background was breaststroke, and only 3 years ago I learned to swim freestyle through a whole program, which was a charity who helps you to learn to ocean swim. It took me 6 months, but now I can say I'm, yeah, happy to swim in the ocean, not in any condition, not on my own.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
A lot of what I've seen of Australia has been really quite rolling.
Very powerful. And that can be in Manly because Manly is a surf beach.
Mm.
It's also can be gentle. And there's a little bay called Shelley Beach just off Manly Beach. And that whole bay is one big nature reserve. And that's very calm. And
Okay.
normally in general, yeah, so when it's very wild, I don't swim because that's dangerous, certainly for me. But it's often that bay is calm and then you see all the little fish in there. So that's
What's your goal with the ocean swimming? Are you planning to do, or this is a challenge for you?
This was a challenge for me to learn to swim 1 kilometer.
Mhm.
And you have different events in the summer in Sydney in different beaches. So my first event was North Bondi Beach, 1 kilometer. But it was a mentor who swam with me. I didn't do it totally on my own. And that was then, the challenge like, oh, I'm able to swim 1 kilometer. It felt like surviving the first time. It didn't feel like swimming. It felt like, oh, I survived. But the more you do it, of course, the easier it gets. And it is, to me, that they're very nerve-wracking. And for me, it's
Yeah,
just that I live in Manly. My goal is just that I can comfortably feel I can swim in the ocean and enjoy
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, and enjoy
Beautiful.
it.
Well, well done. Well done. And yeah, you're right. Like the waves, just the cleansing, because they have negative ions, don't they? So, and when you're doing this sort of work, it's really good to go and immerse yourself. It's just being at the beach. The ions in the air just help to shift the energy.
You're
So,
decharging apparently, yeah, from all the electronics that we use.
mm,
When you put
mm,
your feet in the sand and in the water, you get, decharged and back with nature and yeah.
yeah. That's when we go to Coleroy and we do the intensives over there. They have the ocean pool.
Yes.
I love that because we don't have them here, so that's really a bit of a novelty for us
Yeah.
to go and have a splash around there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Happening again in October. Are you coming to Sydney for that?
I'm going to Mexico
Oh, that
so
sounds.
later in the month, so I will actually be in Sydney in October for Maria Delence's last training
Mm.
weekend. I'll go on to Mexico from there, so I'm presenting at the ISCA event there. Mm.
Are you? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
jealous. That's amazing.
Actually, I'm bringing in it's got returning to south, and it's around the mountain and the Awa, the river. So
Oh,
yeah,
beautiful. So my son has has a new girlfriend. Well, it's almost a year now from Mexico. So
beautiful.
yeah, so and I've been to Mexico City once, but it's beautiful. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I haven't. My daughter and I hopped over to Tijuana for a day when she won a trip to LA for us to go and see Lady Gaga, and we extended it and we went down to San Diego, and then we just kind of walked through this gate and we discovered that we were in Mexico. And we
Mm.
had a day in Tijuana, fantastic. And then trying to get out of Mexico and back into the United States. Oh, what a mission that was. That was just kind of walked through these gates and we were there. And then, yeah, getting out was another thing. But Mexico also has so much cacao, and there's the origins of cacao in there and so much history for me. So I'm also, that's another thing that I do is I make my own cacao.
Oh, wow.
And but I use beans from the Pacific Islands because there's so much of it growing here in the Pacific. It has a
Mhm.
very different frequency to the South American cacao, but I'm really looking forward to spending a bit of extra time there and going to the trees and yeah.
Oh, I love to taste some of it. I met my husband through chocolate.
Oh.
We were both working for Mars Confectionery, the chocolate factory in the
Mm.
UK. That's how we met. And yeah, so I have a relationship with chocolate as well that way. And the other is that I'm addicted to it. I love chocolate. So I would love
Ah,
to taste your chocolate.
yeah. We'll see what we can do. We'll see if we can get you
Yeah, yeah,
some.
yeah, yeah. So you your cacao, and then do you make it into something edible then?
Well, cacao itself is edible. I make it into blocks, big blocks. Just chop it up how they want it, or they can get it in little pods. But and I a chocolate, but it's like 79%, so very dark.
Mm.
And I put some plant medicines, blue lotus and kawa, which is a native here in New Zealand, to help open the heart more, connecting in there. And it's like the driving force. And the blue lotus is really beautiful for opening and expanding your awareness. So it's more of not one you would just have if you're watching a movie or wanting a snack, but more something that you would have if you wanted to meditate
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
be
yeah.
more mindful. Yeah, going into a situation like that. So,
Is it then a
mm,
drink as well as a drink?
you can
Or
make it into a drink. Yep, the cacao you can just as your base and make yourself a drink. Some people like to add sweeteners or spices and stuff like that, ginger and cinnamon or chili, and yeah,
mm,
there's all sorts of things you can do with it. But I don't temper it either, so that's the other thing, that most chocolate is tempered, so it's all shiny and snappy, and mine's not.
okay, yeah, yeah.
Between constellations and making cacao and trying to keep it like as processed as possible. But
Yeah.
people seem to like it. It has a different flavor. But yeah. So finger in two different pies there, but they both really support each other. Cacao really supports constellations, and when I have things that aren't kind of moving with my cacao, I use constellations to help me to understand what's going on there as well
Yeah, yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. And so now with Mexico, you're gonna have a different type of cacao then, probably, and different taste or
It'll be a different taste. It has a it's a different grow in different lands.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
do know, I have experienced some other South American cacao it's a very different, it's more earthy, whereas the Pacific stuff is quite fruity.
Okay.
How would people find you? I know that you've given me some details and we're going to share them in the link, but for those who are audible, who like to hear it, can you share how people can find you if they're wanting to work with you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn with my surname or with my name, Ingrid van der A. You can find me on LinkedIn. I have a website which is called Art of Coaching. Yeah, people can't see it, but I'm on the screen. I have
Hmm.
a coaching background in Zoom. So that's artofcoaching.co. Yeah, and there are all my contact details. So my emails and my telephone number are on there, both LinkedIn and also on the website. That's the easiest, I guess, also to read a little bit more about what I do.
And so it's not just big businesses, you work with small businesses as well,
Yeah,
or mainly big?
all of
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah,
all
all
of
of
it.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Where
And
there
I can,
are, where there are issues with relationship, because it's relational, I guess, our work.
mm,
Um, so
yeah, like I suppose if you're a job, right, and you discover that, so say you're in a managerial position, this is just me putting a hypothetical thing out there, and every time you go there, you have the same issue that your boss is, and you have an idea that your boss is a certain way, and that makes you leave to the next position. There's something really good to look at there.
absolutely.
There's
So,
something.
the process different to families is the process of joining, belonging, and leaving. Because in a family, you always belong if you like it or not. You will
Mm-hmm.
leave it. In organization, is that joining, belonging, and leaving. And organizations are often good at the endings, and that can cause all sorts of issues, and that often can then repeat itself unless you look at it properly. So that's some systemic work, some constellation work that can be done there. But it's like you said, when you feel stuck in a job or when you have a relationship difficult with the boss, but that seems to reoccur each time,
Mm.
or when people are not engaged and talent is leaving as a leader, you want to look at that, what's happening there, just maximize leadership potential. It's just work through some issues that people want to do. And another topic which is often mentioned is people find it hard to have difficult conversations. So, and how do you do
Yeah.
it? So you can
Yeah.
constellate that as well. Or a dysfunctional or even toxic relationships. How do you deal with that? All these things you can look at with the constellation lens. Very nice.
Do you think that there's a reason why organizations find it so hard with the endings?
Yeah, now that the reason. What is the reason?
Like, is there a main
Think,
reason or is there like a lot
yeah,
of
saying goodbye seems to can also
Mm.
be in of course in families saying goodbye. If you think about it as an ending, as a death, how well is death celebrated or looked at
Mm.
or
Mm.
done in this world? I've actually had recently with some of my friends discussions about that. Birth is celebrated and it is beautiful and is talked about a lot. And then death is like, if someone is still mourning, it's almost like, okay, no, it's now a month ago, you should get on with it, just do it. While in the older days or some cultures, it's you're all wearing black for a whole year, you're allowed to mourn for a
Yeah.
year. Also in Catholic religion, which is my background, you have lots of services still in the church, mass, that you still remind you of the people who have passed, and that year is important. While nowadays it's more like, okay, that's done, get on with it. But that's not how we as human beings have good.
Yes.
So
Mm.
that's also with death, but it's with endings in your job, and job is your identity,
Yeah.
is how to attend to that can be done better. Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
Sometimes, hear stories is like people be told, sorry, your job is made redundant. And because of the sensitivity of the data you are dealing with in the organization, you have to pack up all your belongings now. Here is a box for you. With a bodyguard, you get escorted out.
Wow.
Terrible, as if you're a criminal.
Yeah.
So, that's not easy. So important that can then be it too. So how do you cope with that? How do you, or how have a proper ending to still be able to say, this is what I contributed to the business. This is what I got out of it. This is what I leave with them, some toxic environment or whatever. And this is what I take with me to the next job. So we
Mm.
have a clean ending and a clean start. And that can also, with families, with things that you have taken on you, which belongs to ancestors,
Yeah.
is to give back what belongs to others and keep and take what belongs to you. And the same applies to jobs and organizations. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Fantastic. There's in there. So much to unpack. We've been talking for nearly an hour. That's just gone so fast. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing this time with us today.
Thank you,
And
Tracy.
yeah, for those who have heard something on this podcast that you feel like, oh, that's really talking to me, reach out to Ingrid. You can find her details on the website, Ingrid's website, on my website, and also the details that she shared online. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Head over to Instagram and tell me what's resonated for you with this episode. You'll find me at tracy.cartwright. That's Tracy with no E, .cartwright. Or head over to my website, tracycartwright.co.nz, and receive a free audio with the gift from your ancestors. So until next time, be kind to yourself and have fun doing it.